Ladies and gentlemen, India was shaken with the 2012 Nirbhaya horror. Today marks the 12th anniversary. 12 years since that brutal horror. And a petition before the Supreme Court has sought for castration of rape accused. The court said this was barbaric, but sought for responses, including from the centre. The plea, which aims for safer spaces for women, also demands ban on free online pornography, fast-tracking justice for crimes against women, CCTV cameras at all workplaces, some of which are already on paper when it comes to being laws, but fails the test of scrutiny. In fact, the castration debate is not new. After the Nirbhaya case, Manmohan Singh government had come ahead and proposed a draft with chemical castration along with 30 years of jail for rape. It was in 2013 that the Justice Verma Committee had rejected the proposal as unconstitutional and against human rights. But looking beyond India, various states of the United States, Sweden, Denmark, Germany, South Korea, Pakistan and Russia are some countries that allow for chemical castration depending upon the crime. Some against women, some against children, but shifting focus since the Nirbhaya horror, legally a lot has changed. But in reality, here's a very grim reminder. 2024 Kolkata, young doctor raped and murdered. You have Badlapur, remember the protest, the outrage just a few months ago when a sweeper allegedly raped a toddler and sexually assaulted another toddler in the school. Hathras 2020, when 19-year-old was gang raped and murdered. Hyderabad 2019, where a veterinarian was gang raped and murdered. And Unnao 2017, where a 17-year-old was gang raped. In 2013, Mumbai, the gang rape of a photojournalist in Shakti Mills. Of course, post-Nirbhaya, definition of rape has been expanded, consent has been defined, fast-track courts for sexual offences have been set up. There's been enhanced punishment for gang rape offenders, including mandatory death penalty for repeat offenders, among others. But spaces still remain unsafe for India. Joining us now is the president of the Supreme Court Women Lawyers Association, Mahalakshmi Pavani. Thank you very much. Very good evening. Ms. Mahalakshmi Pavani, my first question to you is, why have you demanded for castration of rapists? Why in 2024 are you demanding for that?
Well, to set the record straight, let me tell you, I had moved a petition in 2016. 2016, I had moved a petition again in the Supreme Court. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can. Please go ahead.
Yeah. So in 2016, I had filed a writ petition in the Supreme Court seeking chemical castration and also death penalty for child rapists. And that suggestion was recommended by Justice Mishra and N.V. Ramana. Chemical castration was not accepted, but death penalty came to be incorporated in the POCSO Act. So why chemical castration? You all are talking about human rights and all, but what about these serious offenders who commit heinous crimes on women and children? Let me tell you, Sneha, it's just not about your Hathras case or Jisha case or Franco Mulakal's case. No, after the Abhaya's rape in Kolkata Medical College, there were about 94 incidents which I have highlighted in my petition which have taken place, and barbaric is not the word. So chemical castration is nothing. I mean, innocent victims. In Muzaffarpur case, there the girl was a 14-year-old girl because she detected the advances of a boy. She was raped and killed also. Her parts were mutilated. Her breasts were mutilated. She was found outside the village dead. So what do you say about that? Where is this country heading? Why can't chemical castration be accepted? In fact, I'm seeking surgical castration for offenders who have been convicted. But chemical castration and a polygraph test is them now, because they have to be subjected. They should be punished. And despite the Supreme Court taking suo motu cognizance of the Archie Court rape case, the man has been given bail after 3 months.
Advocate Pavani, so my question is, are you then saying the laws are ineffective or laws are not strong enough? Because if you're bringing in the RG Kaur case, that's of course a very different case. But even in that case, the fact is that that man is out on, the accused are out on bail again. Why? Because the CBI could not file the charge sheet in those cases. So is it about the loopholes in the system? Is it the weak laws? Is that what you're saying? Because if you talk about castration, chemical castration, that would not have been even in the case of RG Kaur right now, because they're not convicted. They're accused in this case.
No, but see, there is a chemical castration is different from a surgical castration. Chemical castration or a clinical castration only
Fair
has
enough.
an effect for 3 months, right? Now, having said that, we have stringent laws in place, but are they being effectively implemented is my question. 12 years has passed, nothing has changed. Because there are punishments, but there is laxity, there is unwillingness, there is corruption by the government agencies conducting these kind of cases, and there is laxity in the investigating agencies. So something has to be done about this. There are laws, strict laws.
Advocate Pavani, so here's where I'm coming in, and I'm trying to understand, because one, you're a woman, two, you're a lawyer, three, you are the president of a very important association, a legal association as it were, and you're of course living in the national capital as well. Advocate Pavani, what I'm trying to understand is, you are saying there are laws, there are strict laws, but there is corruption, there is weak enforcement. But when you talk about castration, it's again a law that needs to be enforced. It's a form of a punishment on the accused. So if the focus has to be the implementation of strong laws, which you say is extremely weak, then how would castration help?
At least there will be some respite to the person, because it's not only the death which happens. With the girl's death, with the victim's death, the family also dies. Because you know what happens? There is victim shaming, victim blaming, and then there are all kinds of clips circulating on social media. The reputation of the girl, the name of the girl, everything is out. So don't you think that the accused and his family also needs to be shamed? There must be, when a man is stripped of his manliness, there will be an iota of change. And what happens? Nothing is going to see. At the end of the day, we are punishing
Advocate Pavani, but a very important thing here. Allow me to come in. Advocate Pavani, a very important statement that you have said, the accused also has to be stripped of something. He has to have a sense of shame. But he is an accused. He is not convicted. So if he is an accused, how can we even think of something like this according to the Indian legal system? It's not permissible.
Then what do you think is permissible? How do you think the crime rates will come? The crime rates have been increasing.
But how do you even know something like that has happened? Advocate Pavani, I'm genuinely asking you this because you're also a legal mind. If somebody is accused and somebody is not a convict, how do you go ahead and say that that person should be castrated or chemically castrated? He's an accused. He or she is an accused.
Oh, I'm sorry.
In this case, castration will be for men, obviously, but an accused, not a convict.
So what are you trying? Till he's proven guilty, we should wait. It will take another 10 years, 20 years. You know what happened in Hyderabad doctor's case? That man was killed. Those men were killed in an encounter because people want instant justice. This is, and there is nothing wrong. You all are talking about an accused who has been caught red-handed. Who's been caught red-handed? There are cases where they've been caught red-handed. Just 2 days back or 3 days ago, there was a 1.5 daughter of a construction worker who was raped by 3 persons. She's battling for her life in the Noida government hospital here. So how do you curb these kind of crimes? And in a country of 145
Advocate
crore
Pavani,
people...
but what you are saying, isn't it quite opposite to what the principles of justice are? For the justice that you propagate, for the justice that you stand for, you fight for, isn't what you are saying quite antithetical to what you stand for legally? Because you are really saying an accused needs to be facing that, where, well, the point is still, he's an innocent till proven guilty.
Innocent
he or she.
Guilty. But here now he's guilty, let him prove his innocence. So what happens even if he's clinically castrated? Please tell me, after 3 months...
But you're already punishing him before. Him or her.
He needs it. What about... Well, can you bring back that child victim from...
Okay.
Can you bring her back from the grave? Please tell me.
Okay. Advocate Pavani, thank you very much for your time. I'm opening this up to our panelists as well at this point. you're free to stay on with us. It would be a pleasure to have you along. But, you know, we leave that to your decision because I think you had to go off earlier as well. But that's for you to decide. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you.
And let me just introduce my panelists at this point. I'm being joined by Brinda Adige, who's an activist, Aditya Pratap, who's an advocate, Rekha Agarwal, who's a family lawyer, Dr. Nisha, who's a public policy analyst. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining me. Well, let me just straight come to you at this point, Rekha Agarwal. Rekha Agarwal, we just heard the petitioner in this particular case, and it was important to get the petitioner in this case because the petitioner is not just anybody. The petitioner is the president for the Women's Legal Association of the Supreme Court. It's a very important organization, and we just heard the petitioner speak. There was palpable anger. Now, the petitioner is saying, why not castrate? How do you look at this?
I really respect Ms. Pavani. Now, you know, she's a lady, as you said, and she's a lawyer and holding a very important post, and a very, very seasoned lawyer at the same time. But unfortunately, I really do not agree with her point of view. I do appreciate that, you know, she's palpably angry. We all are. Who isn't? And especially after what happened in the Nirbhaya case, 12 years, you know, when we go down memory lane, everything is coming back so vividly for me. The number of TV shows had done at that time and how terrible it was to just even speak in those, in those sessions. But I think the Supreme Court was absolutely right in their observation that it is barbaric. Castration, whether it is surgical, she's obviously speaking about chemical castration, not surgical. But I think I fully endorse what the Honorable Supreme Court said, that it is barbaric and against human rights. And I also heard your take on it, Shreya, when you said that he's an accused. So, Sneha, until the accused is proven to be guilty, you know, it would be premature and it would be absolutely against his constitutional rights. What if ultimately he is found to be innocent? You know, you cannot reverse it. You've already castrated him. You know, you've brought him indignity. You've taken away his manliness. You've taken away his fundamental rights. And just as the prosecutrix and her family suffers, at the same time, can the accused and his family be made to suffer in this manner? You know, after all, he may be having his family, he may be having a wife, you may be taking away his right of procreation. So that's a fundamental right you're taking away. So, you know, an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, you know, cannot really be what our Constitution stands for. So I think that what the need of the hour over here is, we do have a very, very strong legal system. The laws are very strong. Justice Verma Committee has already rejected, the demand for castration that had been made at that point. And ultimately, even in 2016, Ms. Pavani's petition was also rejected. Let us just ensure that the law is implemented in a proper manner. There are more fast-track courts. The investigation is quick and efficient so that the charge sheet is watertight. And if the accused is actually guilty, he does not go scot-free. But it should not be the other way around. We don't have to make a specimen of the person.
I get your point. I get your point, Ms. Rekha. In fact, let me just get in Advocate Aditya Pratap as well to respond. Aditya Pratap, how do you look at what Rekha Agarwal just said? I mean, India, there are other countries like the United States, like Germany, like Russia, that at some stage have castration, depending upon the nature of crimes that they are convicted for, particularly sexual abuse, sexual offense, including rape against women or children. It varies across countries, but there are countries that allow for it. How do you look at what's come before the court today? The court, of course, saying that it's quite a barbaric demand, but went on to broaden that debate, also asking for responses, but first sticking to this, Aditya Pratap.
See, come to think of it, the situation of crimes against women in India is quite deplorable. And further, if you see, that in several cities in India are known as literally as rape centers. It's like the masculinity there is so toxic, and you have lots of throngs and throngs of unmarried men, who literally look upon women as prey. You go to any educational institution, any place, all the abuses have a women or a sexual connotation in them. So, as they say, criminal law, when it's drafted, reflects the ground reality of the country. And the statute is to be made to combat a social evil. Now, if we see, for instance, sex-starved men, I mean, I'm not taking any sides, but we just see the situation. that sex-starved men have a tendency to pounce upon, upon females. It's like today, why do women feel unsafe in so many parts of India? Today, for instance, I appreciate the gesture behind the filing the PIL. The intention is also so that, so as to make India a safer place for women. Now, the point is that one more, what is the significance of chemical castration? The significance of chemical castration is that it is likely to deter repeat offenders. Because how many cases have been wherein a person has committed rape, he has gone behind bars, he's come out and committed rape again. So the rates of recidivism among rape convicts needs to be analyzed. Because if, let's suppose, and I'm not saying make it the norm, chemical castration can be, say, for a sort of a rarest of the rare punishment kind of thing. That, for example, where there's a gang rape, of course, if there's gruesome rape, etc., there can be death also. But in generally, where the rape acts are very gruesome, where there's been gang rape or something, chemical castration has been because the law also sees whether that person is a threat to society. Is he a threat to society after getting released from prison, either on completing a sentence or otherwise? And that is why, if you see, because criminal jurisprudence is moving more towards a kind of a social control kind of philosophy, where the population, the people, they demand concrete and firm solutions. Because the people are also aggrieved by the constantly recurring horrific crimes, which leaves everyone appalled.
So you are essentially saying there is space for chemical castration in a society like India, legally speaking.
Yeah, and one more thing I would like to add is that a lot of places in India suffer from extremely adverse sex ratio. And I would like to make a theory here that where men reside in places with extremely, a very oblique or very disbalanced sex ratio, the threat to women there actually increases. The probability of crimes.
Okay, I think we'll have to hold it there. That's another debate. That opens up a very different tangent. We'll try and get to that, but that's really a very different tangent. Dr. Nisha, if I can get you in. Dr. Nisha, there's, of course, extremes to both of this. Opinions to this is extremely polarized. But how do you look at what's happened, one in court today, but juxtapose it with whatever has happened since Nirbhaya, the gruesome cases, the absolutely horrendous crimes, and we are just naming few of them that really saw massive protests. How do you look at all of it?
Rape is a heinous crime, no doubt about it. Being a woman, I truly and personally do not even support any of the harmful effects that any women have to suffer because of that. But when I talk about castration, see, I heard many of the speakers saying that you have to do a castration, be it surgical or be it chemical castration. My question is, what is the point of even going with castration? Can that stop or prevent the increasing number of rape rates in our country, India? Point number one. And point number two is, as far as the country India is concerned, we have to take into consideration two perspectives, because the legal system is based on reformative system as well as retributive system. Reformative system talks about even a criminal could be, they would be reformed, we put in rehabilitation centers and they have a chance of coming again. Whereas retributive means punishment is better than anything. I'm not saying that you have to literally, support the accused or whatever, but rather just by doing castration, it doesn't mean that we are going to have a huge change. Rather, death penalty could be something that I prefer, or life imprisonment could be something that I literally suggest. If you see countries like South Korea and UK, South Korea went with castration, and UK went with life imprisonment, and they say that, okay, the so-called rape rates, the crime rates of rape has reduced. But now in a country like India, we don't follow revenge system. We follow a justice system. And taking into consideration the political perspective of our country, India, it is not possible for us to actually go with such kind of chemical castrations. For the fact that this chemical castration, having said that, in the technological era, it is even irreversible. And it doesn't mean that a person who has undergone such kind of chemical castrations cannot have any sort of feeling. As you were saying regarding the Nirbhaya case, yes, the woman was very brutally raped. No matter, we cannot even justify 0.1% what has happened to her. Of course, she was brutally raped. But then we need to understand that it was not just a rape. They were psychologically sick, that they were psychopaths where we have even seen that a rod was inserted inside her and they were like totally brutally murdering her like an animal. And now, if chemical castration is done, do you really think that we can prevent such kind of psychopath people from coming in our country, India, again? And once the castration is done, when they come out of their
Pritha, do you want to come in and respond that? How much of a deterrence to what? Brinda Adike, do you want to respond to that? How much of a deterrence can something like a castration be, as Dr. Nisha is pointing out? Gruesome horrors
Because it
and
is not
crimes,
turnout.
but
See, castration,
is a
you think that doing that
is a gruesome legal recourse a befitting and the only response? Brinda Adike?
First and foremost, we want to look at the gruesome crimes that a rapist might have committed and commits. We also want to look at recidivism. But more than all of that, we also want to look at fixing the justice system. Now, they say that our justice system is a reformative system. Good. We need to have reformation because we believe that's what our constitution constantly tells us, that reformation and the human rights are respected and upheld. And what Mrs. Mahalakshmi is advocating is chemical castration to reduce recidivism. And this chemical castration, if at all needs to be looked at more seriously, is when you are sure, when at an interim point, that you're sure that this is the rapist. Now, by the time this rapist final orders come, it might take a year, 5 years, 6 years. We know of several cases where rapists who have come out on bail or even parole have gone out and raped again, and some of them have also murdered and killed the victim. So what is it, that reformation that you want to look at? I still want to look at reformation, absolutely. But in these cases, you want to see control and reduce recidivism. And for that, I think chemical castration should be seen in a more scientific manner and not in so much of emotional saying it's gruesome, it's barbaric. Absolutely. This child who was raped, her breast cut was gruesome and barbaric and horrific and atrocious. In the same way, we do not want another child to become prey to this man. And I use the word man because we know it is only men who repeatedly rape, and to wipe out evidence will murder that person. So we need to look at these laws that will put the fear of law into these perpetrators and rapists. And if there is a child who has been raped, then
Dr.
death
Nisha,
penalty should
Dr.
be
Nisha,
given.
30
For all
seconds.
of
Do you want to
this-
respond? Do you not want to respond?
Because
Because
we
it's
want the justice
interesting
system,
that
so-
what Brinda Adige is saying is actually what she is claiming is from a lens of reform, which you said wasn't part of what the measures were being demanded for, but she is looking at it from a prism of reforms.
obviously, yeah. So as she was saying, see, she's saying castration is required, but let me ask you something. Do you really think that because of this chemical castrations, will India be able to reduce the number of crime rates? And do you think our legal system, as per Article 21, permits such kind of thing? And if it is going to reduce the kind of rape rates, then it is okay. But please understand, they will turn out to be gladiators, because this chemical castration is something that is only reducing the person's ability to have an intercourse. It is even irreversible in nature. Having said the technology is available in our country, India, Ms. Brinda, at the same time, this is not a complete solution. India is among one of the top countries where rape rates or crime rates with regard to rape is high. And just by doing castration, we cannot even say that, we can prevent complete rape. Our educational system, the sex awareness and education at the school level has to be uprooted deeply, because that is not there. What is happening? We can see such kind of crime. And by the way, people are not just raping a woman and they are just killing her out of that. They're enjoying it like a beast or an animal, and they're making sure that they are doing so much of activity, very heinous activity, and they have a psychological satisfaction out of it. So what do you say for that? Just by doing
Brinda
castration,
Adige?
you cannot.
Brinda
And there's a
Adige,
study in 1992
is this a
I
call
agree
for
with
an
you on the
extreme
education
measure
part
out of
of it.
anger and frustration of what keeps happening?
Sorry, out
Madam?
of? I didn't get you.
Brinda Adige, is what Dr. Nisha is saying, or is the call for castration, as it were, that has been mooted in this petition, is it largely out of the frustration and anger?
No, I don't think it is frustration and anger alone. It is also looking at ways and means to reduce. We know that no society in the world has been able to stop and say, oh, there is no rape at all over here. What we are looking at is a comprehensive response to something called rape, especially heinous rape. One moment, madam. Heinous rape, which means we want to fix our justice system. You said our legal system doesn't allow it. So that doesn't mean that I've written it in stone and it must not be allowed. It is important for the legal system to look at how my society has developed, And what is happening as a result of all of this? We can say at one point saying, I will give you education. Yes, good. We will stop pornography. Yes, that doesn't mean 20
Okay.
years ago when pornography was not so easily available, rape was not there. But today, there is no fear of punishment. There is no certainty of punishment. And there is no swift punishment. So though reformation is very important, there has to be penal action. Until
Penal
and unless
action,
that
there
fear
is
is
nothing,
there,
Yes, Brinda, there is penal
until and
action.
unless
You
that
can't
fear
say
is
it's
there,
not there.
hold on. We want the system to fix itself. So you cannot be having a judge saying, I'm going to take this case for the next 20 years. Why? In this age of technology, in this age of sophistication, why are judges not able to bring about all of this in the next 9 months to 1 year? They
So
should
just
bring it to a conclusion.
So, Miss
At least
Aditya,
we
are you
know
also
that we
then
will be
saying,
able to
are you
hold on
also
to them.
saying castration for accused, and you're not essentially arguing for castration for the convicted? Are you also saying it is for the accused?
You're asking me, Sneha?
That's right, Miss
Yes,
Adige.
I'm
If you're
talking
saying
about
that
for
the
the
cases are going to
convicted.
go on for 20 years or so, and you want... Okay.
Yes, for the convicted.
All right.
See, I would disagree with one point
Okay.
of Ms. Brinda.
Let me
My
just
question
take
is,
in...
chemical castration is reversible, then what is the point of doing it? And do you think we can stop the psychopaths? Do you think we can stop the gladiators
All right, we just
from
get
not
to
taking
that.
revenge?
So there comes your
We just
reformation.
get to that.
You
Aditya Pratap, if I
spruce up
can
your
get you in.
reformation.
Aditya Pratap, here's the point. Let's look at what happened after Nirbhaya. Let's look at what happened after the absolute horror around Nirbhaya. There were laws that were changed. So you had the definition of rape that was expanded. You had consent that was defined. You have fast-track courts that were set up. You know, there's a whole debate around it about how fast-track courts, how many of them exist around the country. But nonetheless, at least those that are existing, at least the cases that are being cleared, conviction seen is much faster than an ordinary court. The mandatory death penalty for rape offenders. So a lot has happened legally from post-Nirbhaya. Again, what you see in the petition that has come up today, and it's also important, look at the petition, what it says. It says ban on unrestricted online pornography, no bail for trial for serious crimes, but also things like CCTV cameras at all workplaces, fast-track justice for women's crimes, 24/7 helpline for immediate assistance. Now, all these, at least some of these, are already existing in paper. So the essence is it's completely failing on the ground.
See, absolutely. The petition seeks invocation of the apex court's writ jurisdiction under Article 32 of the Constitution of India. And here, when the apex court invokes its jurisdiction, it is to protect the fundamental rights. Now, you know, let alone laws, we even have Supreme Court orders which are not complied with. So, of course, the petition seeks to bring the Supreme Court's constant attention towards ensuring that the measures ordered by it are implemented. Now, for instance, online pornography. There are judgments on online pornography. There are laws on online pornography. But do we see enforcement? Pornography is everywhere. In fact, even though the government has done its part in blocking websites, etc., it is still all
It's
over the
even
web.
in the parliament.
And
You've had
therefore,
scams where even MPs, elected and non-elected, and MLAs have been caught on their phones allegedly watching pornography.
Yes.
It's literally in the parliament as well, but please carry on.
Yes, so exactly. So, you know, and then we have the other measures also. For instance, helplines for rape victims. And then what were the other things you said? Like the petition seeks a series of reliefs. Of course, the petitioner might not succeed in getting all the reliefs. But remember, just as the Honorable Supreme Court of India heralded in judicial guides, you know, when you remember the sexual harassment guidelines that versus state of Rajasthan, forgot the name. That was the case in which the Supreme Court, even though there was no sexual harassment legislation in India, the Supreme Court went to Vishaka versus state of Rajasthan. And in the case of Vishaka versus state of Rajasthan, even though at that time 354A had not come, sexual harassment was not yet an offense. Yet the Supreme Court went ahead and framed guidelines for workplace sexual harassment. So likewise, I always see this petition as an opportunity for the court to invoke its writ jurisdiction, its inherent powers, and effectively go the extra step, if not judicial legislation, at least lay down firm guidelines, which will sort of interdict the rising scourge of pornography, crimes against women, rape, and others. And it will also, the Supreme Court has an opportunity.
One question very quickly. A 30-second, a lot of focus is on men here, men being the accused, men being the convicted, men being the perpetrators of violence against women. Yes, but if you look at women, even they are part of it. Fair enough, there may be many who would say that the numbers are much less, you cannot compare it. That's an argument to be made. But a castration is particularly against one particular gender. What about violence against children? What about rapes and sexual assault against children, where even mothers abet the crime? And we've seen those instances where, the family or the mothers have just hushed up, particularly if it's a daughter and the crime and the accused is in the family. These are all things that we have seen in the past in cases as well. And this is an important perspective that I want to get in. 30 seconds, Aditya.
Well, first and foremost, see, remember, the petition is quite detailed, and it is not necessarily focusing on men. For children, we have the POXO Act, Protection of Children from Sexual Offences Act. And POXO Act contains stringent. What this petition seeks to do is add teeth to the penal provisions. Offences already in place. The petition seeks to add
very quickly, if I can go to Rekha Agarwal. Rekha Agarwal, look at what the courts have said in the past. We've had, in the RG Kar Medical College case, you have the Supreme Court say the nation can't wait for another rape. Well, another rape has happened. Several rapes have happened since then. Hathras 2020. The state has failed in its duty to protect safety of women is a matter of national interest. Now, 2019, there is a crime that shakes society's conscience. These are words and statements from the Supreme Court. I'm using that as a benchmark, as a lens, because how else am I going to bring in about how shocked people? But of course, visuals of protest are on the screens as well. But Rekha Agarwal, I mean, there would be petitions like this. There may be petitions in the future. Would you just say that there's an abject failure when it comes to ensure that there could be safer spaces for women? Even with the petition that has been filed, look at the things that they're demanding. In paper, it's already there. In reality, none.
Sneha, you're absolutely right as far as the petition is concerned, except for the point of the prayer for castration that has been made. I fully agree with the prayers that have been made by Ms. Pavani, and there is a total failure of justice and security where women are concerned. Nirbhayas will come and Nirbhayas will go. There'll be so many cases. We had the RG Kar case very recently, just a few months ago. Despite that, as you rightly pointed out, that he's on bail. So that's our legal system. A person may, in a given case, be given bail. In a given case, he may not be given bail. So the law is the same for everybody. You are, innocent until proved guilty.
Okay.
We do have a 3-tier judicial system to provide justice. You cannot be guilty held guilty just by what the Sessions Court has held. You got a High Court and you got a Supreme Court also. And after that, you got a review petition and a curative petition and a mercy petition and so on and so forth. So just providing, meting out any punishment to an accused right at the first level would be injustice and a total barbaric act, and a violation of the constitutional rights that every person has until he is proved guilty.
Brinda Adige, I'm afraid I'm totally out of time, but I have to ask you this question again. How do you look at this from the prism of gender? Because obviously, if you're talking about castration, it is against men. It is against men who are convicted in cases of sexual offense, rape, and so on and forth, depending upon how it comes about, if at all it comes about. But let's just spend a minute to look into it, that it's not just men always who are the accused in this particular case. And it's important that we acknowledge this fact, though the argument may be that, a lot, and you look at the numbers and the perpetrators, the numbers are absolutely lopsided.
Numbers are lopsided. It's not so much lopsided as much as it is men who commit more rapes on women. And I'm sure there are women who are also rapists. And I'm sure that there is I read about it, that women can also be sterilized or something like that. I'm not too sure what the actual medical term is. But a punishment and a fear of law is very important. And the swiftness with which all of this comes about. Because if we continue to go on and saying the forensic has not come, so-and-so has not come, there is no victim-centric approach. You're looking at the law continues to look at,
Right.
we will not punish the one innocent. Let the 99 guilty stay there. So what about this victim? What about the survivor? Does my constitution not uphold the survivor's right to justice? And should it not also work towards it? How long will my justice system continue to say we have no vacancy, we have a lot of vacancies, we do not have this, we do not have our functionaries in place? Put it into place.
All right.
We are not
Okay.
a poor country anymore.
Okay. Brinda Adige, Aditya Pratap, Rekha Agarwal, as well as Dr. Nisha, thank you very much for your time. This, of course, is a very nuanced debate. It's hugely volatile. It's extreme. There are people who are very polarized on this. But one thing that everybody would agree is our justice reform system, our policy enforcement, our law and order enforcement really is lacking in India. And before we end this segment, this debate, let's very quickly listen in to the reactions that came into our panelists. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
If any barbaric activity is done, I think it is time that we also become barbaric.
I would not agree. Simple reason would be, especially after the Atul case, I think we have to be sensitive towards men also, and it's very easy to misuse these kind of severe punishments.